It is Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern, which means it is time for the Audible. Thank you for watching Sportsbook Review. I'm here with my guys, Donnie, RightSide, and the Whale Capper, ready to break down this card. We have a great group of cappers in the chat, and it is time to get to work. Donnie, RightSide, how you doing on this Friday afternoon?
Look, we mean business today. I'm wearing black on the show, cracked open an extra monster. Information is flying out there in the Twitterverse. This is the place to be right here at sportsreview.com. 4 p.m., getting you ready for the weekend right here on the Audible.
Whale Capper, your hot streak is intact. I may look like I'm on a hot streak because I'm wearing this Warren Moon jersey again, but it's by the skinniest of margins, just barely plus units. And we have a real one on a hot streak right now. The Whale Capper, heating things up, looking good, seeing things clearly. How are you doing on this Friday afternoon?
I'm great, man. Winning is winning, Jimmy. Don't even if it's a slim margin, it doesn't matter. You've turned the ship around. You've righted things here. We're rowing in the right direction. It's Friday. It's tough to complain about anything in life right now. Everything is going swimmingly. So let's talk some football. Best way to end the week. Let's break down this card.
I do have some things to complain about. My record, first, I don't believe the ship has turned around. Secondly, I was on the under last night, Thursday night football. Very enjoyable punt return, or a punt block for a touchdown, 2 fumble returns for touchdowns. Makes me want to smash something. But Marcus Sebastian says the autumn wind is a Whale Capper. So I'm ready to get to work. We got Alex Ramirez, DX Filer, Anna Merrick, Nico, Remarkable Gaming, Sean Mick, TJ Parks, Joe Yurkovich, Tapio Asuma, Drew Barron, Aaron Maybe, Buffo on the beat, a.k.a. Bill Buttlicker, Manny Sanchez, Dean Lawther, Ziggy Balls in the house, Capper, John, Remarkable Gaming, Robert Weimer. Thank God. Robert Weimer's been the most consistent thing in my life, being here on Tuesdays and Fridays, and we love it, Robert Weimer. It means so much to us that you're here with us each week. Craig77, what a great group. Let's start by this disturbing record in honor of honesty and transparency. Rafa, my friend, could you please pop up our NFL records thus far? There it is. Oh, God. All right. Now, I still have hope. I still have great dreams. And I like my card very much. And I'm already locked in with 6 bets, so I feel hopeful. DT Doug's Just Jordan in the house. Let's get to work right now. And let's start with Panthers, Buccaneers. Buccaneers open at -1. Now the Panthers -2 or 2.5 in London, England. We are over across the pond. This total opened up at 46, now 47 or 47.5. Yes, Kyle Allen has this offense humming. The big question is, can the Buccaneers stop McCaffrey? Ifa Obada is the big story in this game. We're not here to talk about heartwarming stories. We're here to pick winners, but it's nice. He was trafficked as a 10-year-old, man, with his sister from the Netherlands, and he is now a football superstar. Gives you hope, hope to see somebody fight through those terrible, terrible things and then find success. It is a great story. Mario Addison having a great season. Starting off his career, 6 sacks, past 3 games, best season of his career, and Winston looking very, very good. Franchise record, 1,371 passing yards through 5 games. Second in the league with 11 TD passes. Godwin coming off consecutive games in which he's got 125 yards and 2 TDs. He's looking very good. Shaquille Barrett looking very good. I have no look on this game at all. I know a lot of people on the Panthers. I don't know very many people on the Bucs. Donnie, RightSide, do you have a look on Panthers Buccaneers?
You're about to know your first gentleman on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I made it a pick 6 contest for us, Jimmy. Took the +2. I believe it's at -107 in the contest. And we're going to get a lot of weird information coming out all throughout the show. Flying over everything looks well, and whoever gets there first usually has the advantage, which you think that would be the Carolina Panthers. And then I guess these long plane rides, because out of nowhere, Shaquille Barrett is downgraded to questionable with an oblique injury after he practiced all week but took the plane ride over, and now something is wrong. So if whatever could go wrong with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense, that's probably the last person you want it to go wrong with. But there's a lot of things that you like about Tampa Bay in this game. We know as long as you get a Jameis Winston, that's a competent NFL quarterback, you should be able to move the football against this Carolina defense. There are some shots that you can take against the Carolina Panthers with the pass game, especially with Mike Evans. Now, here's the question that we're going to have. When you say, where's the rubber going to meet the road? It's obviously, we know the Carolina Panthers usually get that running game cranked up and going. Christian McCaffrey playing as well as anybody, Jimmy, in the NFL at this time. But the one thing Tampa Bay does surprisingly well is they do stop the run. So they're going to put a little bit more pressure on Kyle Allen. I'm going to take the neutral field. I'm going to take the dog in this environment. But damn it, Shaquille Barrett, get back healthy for me.
Taking the dog, Donnie RightSide, with his first look on this card. Robert Weimer says, I'd like the over even more now. Whale Capper, do you have a move on Panthers Buccaneers?
I think Donnie found the value side. As we kind of saw this setting up, this matchup setting up, Tampa Bay obviously won their first tilt. It was in Carolina. It was on a Thursday night on a short week. They held on for dear life there, as Cam Newton could have scored a touchdown at the end of that game to give Carolina the win. Short little turnaround here for another divisional matchup. It's going to be interesting to see if anything changes about the way these two teams approached each other from the last game. Oftentimes when you see divisional opponents play each other this close together, you get a little bit of a zigzag where, okay, well, this worked for us last time, this didn't, so this time we're going to do this and this. I would say that probably plays a little bit into an over here, because I would personally think that Tampa Bay is going to score points. I think Godwin and Evans have really matured a lot since week 2 in terms of their ability to create points for this Tampa Bay offense. And Jameis Winston has settled into a nice rhythm. Didn't look great against the Saints last week, but he was in the Dome. That was their second straight week traveling. Obviously, this is a third straight week traveling for these guys. But given that we expected them to be about a point and a half favorite, I think Tampa Bay is the right side. I didn't make a play on this one. It hurts when you have a standalone game like this and you really can't find an edge. I can make a case for Carolina, but Kyle Allen's not a quarterback I'm really interested in getting involved with. We saw 3 weeks ago he played fairly well, but his abilities as a quarterback have slowly come down week in, week out. This may be a get-right spot for him. This may be a spot for him to shine, because Tampa Bay's pass defense is pretty horrific. But if Shaq Barrett's out there, if the front seven for Tampa Bay is dictating this game, and if they can in any way contain Christian McCaffrey, who's limited as well this week after having just an outrageous usage through the first 5 weeks of the season, if they can contain CMC and get after Kyle Allen, then I think Tampa Bay is very live in this one.
Looks towards Tampa Bay. Sean Mick says, yeah, I do fancy the Bucs here, I must say, but the weather's going to be trash. Heavy rain. Bogey34 says, dogs in London, weird things happen. Marcus Sebastian says, early London games, very sleepy spot, favoring the under, especially the teams didn't travel before the weekend. The Sports 78 said, I think this is Kyle Allen's letdown game. Been playing at such a high level. There has to be some regression to the mean. Let's move on to our next spot. Bengals Ravens. Total opens up at 47.5. Now there's 48s on the board. Still a 47.5 at Pinnacle. Baltimore opening up at minus 10.5. That's where it stands right now. There's an 11 at Bet Online. I came very close to making 2 moves on this game, and I stayed off at this point. 68 Fahrenheit, sunny, 14 miles per hour winds. Bengals, Ravens. I almost took the Bengals. I almost took the under. And I still may. The Ravens have come back to earth, clearly. They're lucky to have the record that they have right now. Last 6 games between these two have been decided by 7 points or fewer. Cincinnati ranks 31st against the rush. We know that they can get abused by this Ravens team. In that regard, Jackson, 11 touchdowns, has run for 308 yards as well. A.J. Green sidelined since training camp with an ankle injury. John Ross on injured reserve with a shoulder injury. First-round pick Jonah Williams, offensive tackle, underwent shoulder surgery. Backup Cordy Glenn has yet to play because of a concussion. He's doubtful. He did see limited practice this week. Andre Smith, left tackle, wearing a protective boot. After all that, how could I possibly take the Bengals? I don't know if I can. I don't think I can. I still find the under somewhat appealing. Donnie RightSide, Bengals, Ravens.
Yeah, pick 2 in the pick 6 contest for me this week, Jimmy, on the show as well. I'm going to go with those Cincinnati Bengals getting the 11 points in this game, and it's really a downshift from what I had early in the week, saying, you know what, the Ravens probably going to score some points in this game. They should be able to run away, but going through the week, when you just take a look at what the Bengals are doing, it's okay. But when you look at the team of the Ravens that should be head and shoulders above the Bengals, this just looks one of those get-right games for the actual Ravens as opposed to the Bengals. You know, A.J. Green's a couple weeks off, and they're saying the right things. They're still playing, quote-unquote, hard in Cincinnati, but I don't like what I see out of the Baltimore Ravens offense. A little bit banged up at some of their key positions. You know, wide receiver, even at tight end, Andrews looks like he's going to go, but if he's really healthy and Hollywood Brown is healthy, that adds some different dimensions that those teams can really get after, especially against the Cincinnati Bengals. Case in point, it's a division game. It's 11 points. You're forcing the Ravens to win this game by 14 points. And right now, Jimmy, I'm not so sure they can.
I'm not so sure they can either. Manny Sanchez got 12.5. For Pro Line. Nick O got plus 12 at Pinnacle, and that is at minus 124, the plus 12. That's at Pinnacle. DX Filer says Bengals O-line is terrible. Whale Capper, are you making a move with the dog, or are you making a move with the total?
So in a lot of the same way and a lot of the same reasons that Donnie just laid out, I think the under is the play here. 40. I got involved on the under when it was up around 48. I sold to 47.5. I think that this plays out. I think we already saw this game. This is a replay of Ravens Cardinals. I mean, I don't know. You know, sad for you if you watched Cardinals Bengals last week. There was so many other better games on, but let's just pretend like you know what happened in that game. Those are two pretty even teams, and we saw what happened when the Cardinals went to Baltimore and played the Ravens in that stadium in week 2. I would expect very, very much of the same sort of game plan here. Ravens just get away with the win. This is probably an inflated total in my opinion, because we've seen now 2 divisional games in a row with the Ravens where they've gotten scored on, but they were going up against a desperate team in Pittsburgh last week and a desperate team with the Browns 2 weeks ago. The Bengals season's over. There's no saving this season for these guys. They may, give us an honest effort in this one, but they may get shut out. I would think that this sets up pretty well for the Ravens defense, who has not played especially well to set the tone, to dictate, to get after Dalton with the way that this absolute nonsense offensive line for the Bengals matches up against the front seven for the Ravens is bad news. And then the Ravens should be able to run the ball down the Bengals' throat. Bengals can't tackle well. This sets up as a nice spot for the Ravens to get a pretty comfortable win, and I think it still stays well under the total, because I don't see the Bengals getting into double digits even.
Wow. So maybe a Bengals team total under as a possibility. Wow. I like both your guys' looks. I was close to making them early in the week. I like them both. DX Filer says, get right spot for Ravens D. I agree with Whale. Manny Sanchez says, looking at 48, so slam the under. Yeah, I agree. I agree with both your looks, and there may be additions to my card. Here's another game where there was almost additions to my card. Seahawks and the under. I came very close to making both of them. Seahawks open up at -1. These opening lines are Pinnacles, now -1.5 at Pinnacle. There are 2s on the board. There are even 2.5s at some books. And sorry, let me get back to spreads and totals here. Excuse me, sorry. At sportsbook.com, SBR odds page right here. The total opened up at 47.5, now 47 or 46.5. Cleveland has a decent defense, but we need to know what's going on with their cornerbacks right now, with their secondary. Clearly looks like Baker Mayfield being figured out. And Kitchens just looks ludicrous right now. A quarterback not being figured out is Wilson. Wow. First quarterback in the Super Bowl era to pass for 1,400 yards, 12 touchdowns, 0 picks, first 5 games, 73% completion percentage, leads the league, as does his 126.3 rating. Seahawks have just 10 sacks through 5 games, only 18 quarterback hits. We expected more from Clowney and Ansah, and I'm surprised we are not seeing it. Will we see it here against the Browns? Donnie, right side, Seahawks, Browns.
Yeah, but it's kind of interesting because, again, we're taking a look at some injury information. I don't think either one of those cornerbacks, Jimmy, are probably going to play this weekend, maybe hold them out yet another week. Hamstring injuries are always tough, especially to cornerbacks. But here's what we're looking at this game, because there's always that, interesting collision of information that comes, but then you still have to use your intuition over top of it. And what I'm talking about is Seattle played on a Thursday night. They get the extra rest. They're coming in. You also saw, as we keep talking about, the Cleveland Browns going all in versus the Ravens, then flying out, getting busted, and now coming back home. This is going to be an interesting spot. If we're just looking at teams itself, Seattle's the better overall football team. Seattle's the better overall coaching staff than what the Cleveland Browns are presenting. But the schedules are the schedules from what they come up with. If we look at just the Seattle time frame here on their early games, they beat Cincinnati by a point. They beat Pittsburgh by 2 points. They lose to the New Orleans Saints. They go down, they beat Arizona up in Arizona, which most teams should be able to do. And then they squeak. They actually should. I mean, look, Greg Zuerlein misses a chip shot field goal for him to end that game. They win that game, and Seattle loses. So you try to take the game itself and sort of peel back the layers, because I do think Cincinnati's a much better club. But then I'm saying to myself, why haven't they? The only team they showed it against technically was the Arizona squad as opposed to anybody else. I think Cleveland's going to be live in this football game. I think they're going to be a live dog. I think they have to win this football game. But again, it's one of those games where I'm just going to sit it out. I'm going to watch to see how it is, because I can make a game plan for both of these teams to win. I just have it written down as a coin flip on based upon what I like. Should be a fun one to watch, but it's a real interesting one when you try to dive into it.
It is an interesting one. I look forward to watching it, and I am hesitant to make a move here. It does feel like the Browns will bounce back. Will they bounce back enough to lead towards victory? Whale Capper, Seahawks, Browns.
Yeah, so the look-ahead line here was Cleveland -3, and it flipped all the way across 0, and Seattle's our favorite now. And if we had seen a 3 manifest for Seattle, I probably would be backing them. But with them as a favorite now on the road in the early slot, this is a tough spot for them situationally, and their defense is not good. This defense gave up. They made road Jared Goff look like Joe Montana out there, and I would say that Baker Mayfield, this is a decent spot for him to get after it and score some points. I like the over in this one. I know that the weather specifically has been pushing this total down. Opened up at about 47 when it opened. I got involved right away on the over, expecting that it would get bet up here, because I don't think that either of these teams is really going to be able to, if they get a lead, play keep away and shorten this game. This is either of these two teams is going to be live to throw their way back into this game with the passing weapons that they have and the weaknesses in the passing defenses on the other side of the ball. So I would say that this still sets up fairly well for an over. I'm a little nervous about the wind, obviously. I would like to see some revised forecasts be like, yeah, we thought it was going to be 15 miles an hour. It's only going to be 12. That would make me feel a heck of a lot better. Otherwise, it's going to be a fine weather day. So I think if we can get both teams here into the 20s and, kind of have a competitive game as it comes down to the wire, then over 47 should be a good look. And even as it is now at 46, I think I would still, knowing that the market moved against me, I think mostly based on weather, I would still look for an over in this one.
Yeah, 63 Fahrenheit, sunny 20 miles per hour at this point, but there could be changes. And Beckham has just not looked good, man. Not looked good. His streak of catching at least 3 passes ended at 60 straight games, 4 catches in the last 2 games. We shall see, and I am off, but I'm certainly not going to make a move on the under if you are on the over. Robert Weimer says, wow, well, I was thinking under was the look here. Interesting game here. Let's move on to Texans at Chiefs. And this was a move I did make. I did jump on the Texans in the pick 6 contest as well as with my action. I got 5 -110 on the pick 6 contest. I paid for 5 in my action. It was at 4 at my book. 4.5 was available at -120, and 5 was available at -125. And I talked to Donnie and asked Donnie what he thought about the point situation, and he had such an interesting answer. I'll see if he touches on it in this show, but I thought it was a very, very interesting answer. We know what's going on with the Chiefs. They're beat up. They're hoping to get Tyreek Hill back for the first time since that broken collarbone in week 1. No Sammy Watkins, no tackle Chris Jones, no left guard Andrew Wiley. Texans wide receiver Kenny Still out with a hamstring injury. There's injuries on the offense for both of these teams, yet we still feel like they can put up points. But this is a high total. Right now, it's 4s across the board for Kansas City, a 4.5 at Bovada. This total opened up at 55.5. You can still get that at Bovada and Intertops for 55. Everywhere else, Donnie RightSide, Texans, Chiefs.
You know what's interesting? I agree with you, Jimmy. I think the Texans are the right side here, but this is one of those games also where there's some key components that are coming down to it. I think that Houston offense is going to be able to move the football this weekend against Kansas City defense, especially now against their banged-up defensive line. And also, as we know, pass blocking situations, pass rush situations, we know Kansas City can block. We know Houston get after the passer. But where this game is going to come down to, which is really alarming if you're looking to back the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, when you read in the certain injury details that come out, there's a lot of things that are different. When a guy has like a hamstring injury, hey, he's a game-time decision. The interesting part about this is if he can be able to go. Is it going to be like an ankle injury or just a simple, bruise of a bone or something like that? So, he just needs a couple days to heal up. The interesting thing about the Tyreek Hill news here is try to think of it as a coach here. All right, we're going to get some interesting stuff back on the scan. Let's see what we can do. So they get the scan back, and what do the Kansas City Chiefs do? They don't really make any comments about it, but say he's going to be a game-time decision. That signals to me that they're saying, you know what? Worst case scenario, we don't think he's probably going to go, but let's make the Houston Texans think he's going to go. So if I'm under that mindset that Tyreek Hill's not going to play, Sammy Watkins is not going to play, didn't we just see that play out with the Chiefs and the Colts just a couple nights ago? They scored 13 points. Their explosiveness on offense, which is usually there all season long, is not there. And Patrick Mahomes may or may not have a high ankle sprain coming into this football game. The Chiefs are ripe to get beat in this football game, but it's one of those I would even be willing to take, even if the line drops to 3.5 at that point. If I know that Watkins, which looks like he's out of the game at this time, and Tyreek Hill is not going to play, where are the points coming from? Look, they're going to manufacture points. Don't get me wrong for the Kansas City Chiefs. They're a good football team, but you're looking at totality of an offense. Give me the Houston offense that's going to come into this football game versus that Kansas City defense any day of the week. I love your look on the points there, taking it with 5, Jimmy. I'll take it at 4, 3.5, and especially if they're going to be missing Tyreek Hill on Sunday as well.
Absolutely. Our guy Nasty Nate in the house says, Jimmy, can you give a shout out to Paul Shack? Of course we can, Nasty Nate. Anything for our guy Nasty Nate. Paul Shack, what up? Thank you guys for watching this show. Donnie, can you touch on briefly what you said on Betting with the Bag this morning about me buying the 5? I thought it was extremely interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I would love to hear Whale Capper's take on this as well because, more and more analytics, for good, for worse, for whatever, are coming in the sport, and it's something we as handicappers have to start taking a look at here. And Jimmy asked me the questions earlier today when we were on Betting with the Bag, saying, hey, what's the difference, maybe between 4 and 5 or what that actually is? Is it a good move or bad move? Donnie 5 years ago would have probably said, hey, Jimmy, that doesn't make any sense. Like we're talking about, you're not going through the 3, you're not going through the 7 or the 10 or the 14 or the 17. And that's, probably not good money spent. But now we're seeing a total involvement of these offenses with these teams that are saying, you know what, if we're, up 7 points, let's make it 9 points. Or if we're down 11 points, instead of kicking the extra point, so you get on the 10s and the 3 numbers, let's go for 2 to 9 points and make it a difference there. So at the end of football games, now we're taking a look at these numbers like 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Sometimes you can meld those numbers together now because the more the advent of going for the 2-point conversion is really messing up what us traditional gamblers look at with the 3s, the 7s, and the 10s. So every point now you might come down to like, why are they going for 2? I can't believe they're going for 2, or they went for 2 3 times in the football game, costing themselves 3 points. You know what that 3 points is there, Jimmy? The difference between 7 and 4, and you land on 5.
Exactly. The traditional way of looking at points is changed. I'd love to hear Whale Capper touch on that as well. As Texans, Chiefs, Whale Capper, do you have a look on this game?
I do, but I guess to kind of put a pin on that discussion there, which is good, and this is something that you should always be thinking about anyway. You shouldn't just kind of use your gut for these. You should really try to dive into the numbers and make some sort of case one way or another to buy or sell or anything about any key number. In general, when you see a total this high, I can tell you for sure a half point is worth a hell of a lot less than you are buying it for. And it doesn't matter what the number is. If it's 3, if you're looking at 55 total on the board, and you're thinking, gosh, I don't want to lay 3.5. I only want to lay 3. I'm going to buy to -3. That you're paying a surcharge on that is not worth it for this total, because when we're seeing a total like this, there's going to be scores all over the place. There's going to be potential for, just like Donnie was laying out there, potential for missed field goals, potential missed extra points, going for 2. There's going to be all kinds of wackiness to get that final score. There's, look at that scoregami last week with Houston and Atlanta. Like, you never ever seen a score like that in the NFL, to this point in history. And when you have these high scoring games like that, there's just no sense, in my opinion, to buying any points. And in fact, there's more value to selling points just based on the fact that the buying and selling prices for all of these half points are based on kind of normal games, not these outliers with these wildly high totals. So think through those sort of things before you buy or sell anything. And specifically for the Texans, does it make sense to buy it to +5? I'm not seeing that at all. If this game goes one of two ways, this goes back and forth score for score, or the Chiefs are playing from ahead and the Texans are coming back. And if you're down 2 scores in this game and you're positioning yourself for, okay, we're down 2 scores, down by 10 or down by 11, like at the end of the game, Bill O'Brien is going to get his team in field goal position, and then they're going to kick the field goal, go for the, they're not going to be forcing it to score the touchdown to get you within that 5. They're going to be trying to close the 2-score gap to 1 score by kicking a field goal in the last minute, and then trying to recover the onside kick and then go down and tie the game. So I don't think that in this case, the way that this potential game state could play out, it makes sense at all to buy points. And honestly, I think the Chiefs likely get right here. I don't have a play on this one because I would like to see what Pat Mahomes looks like with this injured ankle. I don't put too much stake into who the wide receivers are going to be out there for Kansas City because so much of their dynamic offense entirely boils down to Mahomes. It's all Mahomes. And, when he injured his ankle in that Colts game, you could completely see the entire makeup of the offense changed because Mahomes wasn't busting out of the pocket when they were getting pressure on him. They were containing him. And if you can contain Mahomes and if you can play good man-to-man coverage, he doesn't have wide open guys that he's going to get, sling the ball to. Like, all of his power is his arm strength. And if he's getting out of the pocket and his wide receivers are running, freestyling and getting wide open, and he sees guys running open down the field, he is absolutely impossible to stop. And if he is in any way, shape, or form limited, if he's using, trying to run a more traditional dink and dunk side of, more balanced offensive approach, it's not going to be nearly as dynamic as when he can get out of the pocket, when he can kill you down the field. And, so I would like to see, what he looks like in this game before knowing whether or not the Chiefs are the right side here. But at this really depressed price, I mean, we thought this was going to be a 7.5 kind of a game this time last week, and now it's down to 4. This is way too short of a price for me to get involved in the underdog. And honestly, Bill O'Brien and company, the likelihood that they have the coaching chops that we saw Frank Reich take with that team into Arrowhead and get the win last week. I don't think Bill O'Brien's staff has that same ability. And, especially in, their defense and their coverage and their secondary, I don't think they can cover these guys, even if it's, Mecole Hardman and Buddy Pringle or whatever that guy's name is. Travis Kelce's going to have a day. Like, there's dynamic weapons even without Watkins, without Hill. And if Mahomes is right, he's going to get to 35 points, and Texans should get there, but I don't know if I 100% buy into this staff yet.
Interesting breakdown. Sports 78 says, don't believe the hype with Houston. This is a huge overreaction. DX Filer says, KC probably doesn't lose 2 in a row at home, but I like Houston to cover. KC defense is bad. DX5 says, Watson healthy and in the zone. Mahomes injured scares me. Victor Lou says, Mahomes is banged up. Take the under. Manny Sanchez says they're not healthy. KC way better. Glenn Elliott, man, liking the over. Let's move on to a very interesting game. Man, we've talked about this for a long time, all week. Saints, Jaguars. Man, perplexing. Saints opening up at -2. Now Jacksonville at -2 at some books. This total opened up at 44. Down to 43.5. The public on the Saints, the Sharps on the Jags, but I find it extremely difficult to build a case for the Jags. On Tuesday on our show, Donnie, I was like, how can they be favored? Peyton has Teddy B working on a very simple game plan. Jaguars owner Shad Khan says that he believes Ramsey will play. He says they've had a heart-to-heart, whatever the hell that means. Saints have not allowed a 100-yard rusher in 31 games, held Dallas to 45 yards rushing in Week 4, Tampa to 94 yards rushing last week. Fournette coming off consecutive 100-yard games and leads the league in yards after contact. Jaguars were violated on the ground. 285 yards, the second most they've allowed in franchise history. And then Kamara, we have coming in, and rumors going on about Kamara's health right now. Michael Thomas finished with 11 catches for 182 yards. He finally breaks out with Bridgewater. I mean, I've been perplexed all week about this spot. Donnie, RightSide, Saints, Jags.
Yeah, pick six contest. I am on the New Orleans Saints plus 1.5. It kind of sucks with the Kamara injury news, but it looks like it's more precautionary than how devastating the injury was. But you want Kamara to be healthy in this football game for a specific reason. Is if you're watching last week alone, a player similar in stature and quickness absolutely destroyed that defense, and you would want Kamara to do the same thing. But looking at this game as a whole, we get caught up in like Minshew mania and how well he's playing in the pocket, and I've watched a lot on Minshew over the past couple of games. He's a legitimate NFL quarterback, and I've even stated as much, saying Nick Foles should never get his job back because Nick Foles cost a lot of money. Minshew's going to cost a little amount of money. They can build on it and move on. But getting back to this football game overall, every time I look at the matchups here, and maybe you could say it's a switch off between, who's playing better, Minshew or Teddy Bridgewater at this point. Bridgewater had a couple really bad weeks, was sensational last week versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So if you take those guys out of the equation, most people still rest on their laurels and say, hey, well, which defense is better? Actually, the better defense is the New Orleans Saints. And then you're going to get the old standbys. A way better offensive line on New Orleans. A way better play caller and coaching staff on the side of the New Orleans Saints. So I try to factor in and say, all right, well, the public's loading up on the New Orleans Saints and, sharps are back in the Jacksonville Jaguars. I just don't see it. And then there's the reports that come out midweek that shift the line like a half point. Hey, heart to heart between Jalen Ramsey and Shad Khan. He's not playing this weekend. He's not going to play again this weekend. He wants to be traded. He wants to be out of this. So take that one out of the equation. Michael Thomas should have an easier matchup. But overall, if you go man for man between these two rosters, just about every box is checked off in the favor of the New Orleans Saints. I'm going with the Saints here, Jim. I just think they're overall a much better football team than the Jacksonville Jaguars.
It makes sense to me. It makes perfect sense to me. Whale Capper, how have you figured your way through this market reaction and market move?
I think Donnie's got the right side here. I think it's the Saints, but my play on this one is under. I'm on the under 44. I don't think that either of these teams gets to 20 points particularly easily. I would expect that the Saints do get there if Kamara goes, and if Kamara's full speed. We saw what Christian McCaffrey just did to this Jaguars defense. There's no reason they couldn't replicate a similar approach here for Saints offense. But Teddy Bridgewater, we've said it now week in and week out. He's not a perfect fit for Sean Payton's offense. Last week he busted out on the stat line. He looked great on the highlights, but I would put way more of that on the fact that he was going up against the Bucs secondary that was leaving guys wide freaking open. Teddy Bridgewater is the kind of quarterback that is not going to take risks. If there is good coverage downfield, he is not going to be trying to fit it into tight windows. He's going to take the safer option every time. And I think if the Jaguars can kind of keep the defender, keep the receivers in front of them, play a little bit of tight coverage here, they can force Teddy into what we've seen the first couple weeks here as a quarterback, as opposed to last week where he was really willing to air it out. Which I think sets up for more of a field position type of game. Both of these teams are performing very poorly in the red zone, and the likelihood that you're just talking about, okay, well, let's get into position and kick some field goals, and then let's send our defense back out there, which is our strength. I think when you have two teams that are taking that approach into this game, you're setting yourself up perfectly for an under. This is probably my favorite total on the board this week, and I'm on under 44. I would still bet it now at 43.5 or whatever it is out there. I think this is the kind of game that ends in the high 30s and should be a fun contest. But I wouldn't talk anyone out of Donnie's look on the Saints. I think they get another win here, and amazing what they're doing in the absence of Drew Brees, just stockpiling these wins and getting him the rest and recuperation that he needs to come back and be fully healthy down the home stretch. I think your Saints are probably, they ought to be considered more alive for the NFC title than they are currently. I would put them right now 1 or 2 with the Eagles once you have two fully healthy squads at the end of the year.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. Both of your looks make sense. Donnie on the Saints, Whale Capper on the under. Nico says my favorite bet of the week, Jacksonville -2. The Sports 78 on Jacksonville money line. Wow. Robert Weimer says Jags D can keep Bridgewater under wraps. Blue Chew is for real, dudes like the Jags. One of my favorites this week. Ganjapreneur on Jags money line. Farsha Asami says Jacksonville will win and cover. Don't overthink it. Aaron, maybe I'm on the Jaguars to get it done. Here, I'm all over this game. They will smother Bridgewater this week. Wild. Bleds W, though, says Saints is still the play. DX Filer says, like the Jags, is a letdown spot for the Saints. Wow. Very, very interesting. God, this is a very interesting game. Manny Sanchez says, Whale Capper kills over under. Love it. Love it. Alexandria says this line is telling me to pick the Jaguars because the Saints should be an obvious pick. DX Filer says Saints do not need this game. Wow, this is probably the most interesting handicap of the week. Let's move on to Eagles-Vikings. Now, earlier in the week, I was so all over this over. It was my 2-unit play. It's my 2-unit play in the contest. I bet it. I got it at 43.5. It's now at 44. Talking Eagles-Vikings here. It stayed at 44. Vikings have stayed as 3-point favorites. And the more I've studied, the more pensive I'm sort of getting about it, but I'm not going to buy out of it or anything like that. This is a tough matchup for Philly, and the Eagles are all banged up. Banged up secondary, banged up team. We talked on Tuesday. I talked on Tuesday with Donnie about how sometimes a team like the Vikings, or as an example, need to go up against a shitty secondary to get confidence. And I felt like that's sort of what happened with Thielen and Cousins. They responded to all the criticism. I know it was against the weak Giants secondary, but they started to get rolling. The Eagles are allowing a league-low 63 rushing yards per game this season, and Dalvin Cook, second in the NFL, with 542 rush yards, averaging 5.9 yards an attempt. Eagles pass rush 10 sacks against the Jets last week after only registering 3 in the first 4 games. Brandon Graham, career best 3 sacks. Scandrick, 2 sacks, 2 forced fumbles. There's been issues with the Vikings, the whole Diggs situation, missing practice last week, and the $200,000 fine and all that. I felt like they sort of had a get-right situation against the Giants. And I was on the Vikings team total over in that game last week and cashed that. And I'm on the over 43.5 here, and we all love hearing Donnie's Eagles breakdowns. Donnie, take it away. Eagles, Vikings.
It's a good one, and sometimes it might come down to, which number you're actually going to get in this game. You could have had 2.5. If you like the Vikings and you loved them, 2.5 was readily available a couple of days ago when that line bounced just below 3, and then it tags back up to 3. Some 3.5s out there with juice, and I think it's going to come right down and play it right down that line. But there are some interesting matchups that we look at. If you just take the game on its face, right, here's what we're saying. Well, the Eagles cornerbacks should get roasted. Thielen and Diggs are going to get right, and, they should be able to run wild and get after the secondary. You would be right in that, but the good part about it is it's not a 7-on-7 scrimmage. You have a defensive line. And the one thing we were worried about with the Philadelphia Eagles here in Philadelphia is over the first couple weeks, hey, we should have got you Davion Clowney. We can't touch your quarterback. Well, when you finally go up against a subpar offensive line, you do damage, which is exactly what they did last week, getting 10 sacks. Now, that does have a lot to say about wide receivers not getting open, no tight ends to throw to, and having a third-string quarterback in Falk for the Jets. Yeah, that does have something to do with it. But I got to tell you, this offensive line for the Minnesota Vikings is extremely poor. You have major advantages on just the front four without bringing anybody extra for the Philadelphia Eagles going up against the Minnesota Vikings. And you bring up a good point. Dalvin Cook is a killer in the backfield. He is a big play running back. He did it all his career at Florida State and is showing those tendencies now fully healthy with the Minnesota Vikings. But the Eagles should be able to slow that down. What you have to factor into this ballgame also is you have 2 dominant defensive ends for the Minnesota Vikings. There's no question. But when you can counter it with 2 top 10 NFL tackles at left tackle and right tackle, that's going to be able to get the passing game going. That's going to be able to get some room for the running backs. This game comes right down to it. 2.5, you're probably swayed to the Minnesota Vikings, 3.5 to the Philadelphia Eagles. But I just think if you say just a wide receivers, they're going to beat the Eagles deep. They're going to be able to roast their cornerbacks. That defensive line is going to be huge, including Fletcher Cox beating up that weak interior of the Minnesota line. I think the Eagles defensive line will do a job. Hey, look, this is a coin flip game for me coming down to the end. It's just a matter of what number you're going to get. You want to buy it up to 3.5? That would work really well. If you get the 3, I could see you taking the Eagles. But the at 2.5, if that was available, that's a Minnesota line. I just think the Philadelphia Eagles are built for games like this where they're supposed to go in, they're going to lose, they don't have any cornerbacks, and they step up and play well. It's going to be a good football game here. I think the Eagles can possibly pull this one out.
Alexandria is saying this is the type of game that Eagles will lose, especially with a big clash with the Cowboys on deck next week. And Word did take that half point and grab the Eagles at plus 3.5. Whale Capper, Eagles, Vikings.
Yeah, I'm on the Eagles here, plus 3. They have the better coach. They have the better quarterback. Specifically for these types of high-profile games, we know that Kirk Cousins tends to shrink in the moment. And we know that Mike Zimmer is running a run-first approach, which is going to be huge trouble up against this front seven and linebacking core that's at the top of the NFL when it comes to just talent on the field. I would expect that if you were to use a more aggressive passing approach here and you had a quarterback who is a little bit more confident than Cousins, then yeah, Vikings minus 3 makes a ton of sense. But as they match up, as currently rostered and as currently, with Zimmer out there as your head coach and decision maker, I don't see how the Vikings get a win in this one. I don't think they should be favored even. This game should have been about a pick 'em as far as I can tell you, and I'll happily take Philly plus 3. And I guess the one thing I want to kind of point out, and I get it that Philly's got a bigger game next week against the Cowboys, bigger game for the NFC East, but they can't. They already blew a couple of games that they should have won against the Falcons and Lions this year. They can't afford to overlook anyone. They can't afford to be thinking about next week. They have got to get a win. They have got to move themselves up the standings right here, and to a degree, I believe that Doug Peterson has Zimmer's number. The Vikings defense is good. They're fine. They play great against kind of inexperienced quarterbacks like we saw last week with the New York Giants. But they have one general look, one general philosophy. This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to confuse you. And Zimmer does not have great adjustments. And I think Peterson knows exactly the right way to attack that type of defense. He's going to know how to put pressure on them. Zimmer's not going to have an answer in terms of changing personnel, changing looks, getting different, folks out there on the field to stop what the Eagles are going to want to do offensively. So I think this sets up pretty well for the Eagles to come out and punch them in the mouth. Play from ahead and really let their front seven dictate defensively and make Kirk Cousins uncomfortable and prevent their secondary from getting exposed.
Whale Capper, what do you think of my over?
If I was to play either one, I would look over as well, because I think you're going to see a scenario here where Philly's playing from ahead for most of the game. And if that puts Minnesota on their heels where they have to throw to get back into it, then they're going to score some garbage time points. I could see a scenario here where Philly gets to like 28 or so, and then just through trying to come back, then Minnesota gets into the 20s as well. So I think over is a fair look here.
I like that. Mr. Rizzo says, give me Eagles money line. Ganjapreneur says Eagles money line. And our Flash, star of the odds market, also on the Eagles money line. Brant Hunt says, yeah, I'm on the Eagles. Alex Ramirez says the over. And I like that very, very, very much, hearing all that. Okay, let's keep rolling along. Next spot is now after. I mean, I feel more confident after hearing those the breakdowns from Donnie and Whale Capper and hearing from the chat. But throughout the last 24, 48 hours, I sort of wish that this was my 2-unit play in the contest. And it was a play that I was not on till Donnie's breakdown on Tuesday. And I've since fallen in love with Redskins Dolphins over. Not only is Donnie on it, but Teddy Covers is on it. And I am on it. And the market is moving with us. Let's take a look at it right now. Bookmaker's gone down to 41.5. Okay, but Heritage is at 42.5. Interesting. Okay, Miami at home against the Redskins opened at 41, now 42. Redskins opened up at minus 4.5. Now they are minus 3.5. Keenum has been named the starter. Dolphins and Redskins have yet to beat the spread in any game this year. After halftime, Miami has been outscored 81-0. Washington has been outscored 73-23. Unbelievable. We have Gruden gone. His replacement, Bill Callahan, a run-first coach, was the head coach of the Raiders in 2002-2003, worked for Bruce Allen, now the Redskins president. So they're going to run the ball with Adrian Peterson. Now, that does concern me, but I see sloppy play. I see opportunities for pick sixes, and this was after Donnie's breakdown. Donnie really gave me a ton of confidence with this play. So I'll let Donnie take it away. Donnie, right side, Redskins, Dolphins.
Yeah, Bill Callahan coming into play here, so we'll see what happens. Jay Gruden out the door, but you are getting a little bit of information back coming off. Case Keenum being a starter. So, what's that? Look, Case Keenum gives them a better shot to score than Dwayne Haskins and Colt McCoy do. So that's going to be a positive in your favor. Brandon Sheriff, one of the best guards in football, who missed the past couple weeks, he's going to be back. Now you're talking about a Dolphins defense that if they're not the worst, they're certainly bottom 5. Washington should be able to score points in this football game. Now also have the same angle that I've been telling you guys about for the past couple weeks. Look, say what you want. Brian Flores is getting these guys rallied, is putting them in the right positions to win in the first half, and then it's just saying, you know what, we're just not good enough to win any of these football games. And over 4 quarters, you see when the talent finally wins out. So I do like the Miami Dolphins in the first half to keep it competitive, keep it close, maybe even have the lead at the half or tied, but I do like points in this situation. It's the same thing I talked about, Jimmy, earlier. Sometimes, it's not really all about the numbers, because when you have some changing guidelines where coaching staffs are changing, teams are coming off buys, maybe this is the only win either one of these teams could possibly get this season. The one thing I do like about the Washington Redskins on offense is they're going to have a new, fresh look. The offense coordinator coming in is going to say, you know what, Jay Gruden's out the door. I want people in the NFL to get a look at me. I'm going to run plays that I normally wouldn't run. Maybe a flea flicker, maybe a halfback pass, maybe a wide receiver pass. And the good thing about that is you're going to get disaster plays and you're going to get big plays. Both are usually pretty good for the over in those situations. But also, as I was talking about with Jimmy, you're going for it on 4th down. You don't have anything to lose in this game. You're not playing this close to the vest. We have 4th down at midfield, 4th and 1 and 2. You're going for it every single time. Both of these teams are 0-win teams looking to get 1 win and maybe their only win of the season. When a couple bad teams get together, we saw Cincinnati and Arizona get together last week. Stone cold under through the 3rd quarter. All hell broke loose in the 4th quarter to hit that total. I don't see fireworks, so to speak, of 55 points, but we're talking about 41 points. They're going to get in the mid-40s in this game just by default and the way these coaches are going to approach this football game here.
I agree. And Joe Yurkovich says Keenum solidifies the over. Bogey 34 has a thin skins double result at plus 450. Donnie, do you see the fish coming out firing early and taking a lead here with a chance to gain some momentum at home?
No, and it's another good point you bring up there, Jim, because you have the extra week and the bye week to prepare. So you know what's going to take place with the game plan. They're going to have 15 scripted plays that they've already been working on. I think the Dolphins will be really sharp in the first quarter.
You mentioned that on my show, and I wanted to bring it up again. I agree with that take, and I think that thin skins double result, very interesting, Bogey. Mr. Rizzo says, I'm staring at 42 on the total, Jimmy. Should I grab now, or did I miss it? Well, let's hear what the Whale Capper has to say, and then make a decision after we hear. Whale Capper, Redskins, Dolphins.
Gosh, I love that thin skins double result. What an inspired play. That makes too much sense almost. And I agree that, to a degree, we've seen teams with extra time to prepare, teams coming off of bye really look great so far in this young season. The one exception being the Jets, who shot themselves in the foot because they were preparing for Darnold to be out there, and then they had to throw in their terrible Luke Falk third stringer in the last minute. But I would think Josh Rosen is capable enough to get you some points early in this one, and garbage game, garbage points over makes a ton of sense to me. I've looked really. I haven't personally played anything on this game. I've looked really hard at backing the Dolphins a bunch of different times this week. I think the Bill Callahan experiment is going to go horribly, horribly wrong. The idea that you're making an 0-5 team run sprints, like that's going to somehow fix their season, to a degree, I would expect that the Redskins are treating this like a vacation in Miami more so, and forget, the Redskins defense especially, maybe we're not running sprints. Our season's over. We're 0-5. Like, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. We're professionals. Like, this is terrible. And, the idea that they're going to get anything going on the ground running with Adrian Peterson, with this horrific offensive line that they've got, and with Adrian Peterson, who's 38, and has had so many rushing attempts in his career. Who knows if he'll even make it through 4 quarters if you try to give him the ball 40 times. So this is set up for Miami to get the win, get the cover, and I wouldn't really specifically advocate anyone go put money on this game because it's such a mess. But I think if any side is right, it's Miami.
I love this. It's a very fun breakdown for such a shit game. I'm very excited about watching this now on Sunday. And Bogey, if I do jump on that, which I actually may, definitely give you a shout out. So great look, Bogey. Bogey says that's the response I was looking for. I get it. Okay, this game, I find absolutely riveting this next game. And I am on the under in Niners-Rams. And I know it opened at 40.5 and went up to 50.5, which is where it is right now. It hasn't moved since it got to 59. I actually got it at 51. I actually got it at 51 on the show line shopping, but then bought it at 50.5. Rams open at -3, and now we see a couple 3.5s on the board, both at plus money at Pinnacle and 5 Dimes. So we see some 3.5s on the board. I know when we think of McVay and Shanahan, we think of these two offensive-minded coaches, and we've seen it at work when they played up against each other and put up 90 points. I also know Gas Station Sushi and a spectacular capper is max betting the over. So I understand all that's playing, but I really like the under here. My guy Ant Fam, who's usually in the chat, says it talks about how the Niners have the slowest pace of any team in the entire league. We have Breda running for 6.5 yards per carry. That's going to slow down. That's going to slow down with no usage. Usage hurt. Aaron Donald, his impact is still big because he has to get double teamed, but he's not, 13 tackles, 1 sack. I mean, constant double teams. I get that. I just see this is a spot where Goff does not handle pressure well. He checks down and checks down and checks down. I know he's better at home than he is on the road, but I like the under here. And, I'm not very confident hearing that Gas Station on the other side, knowing what McVay and Shanahan can do. But I was confident enough to make it a top play, a top 6 play in the contest and bet it. And I like it. And I can't wait to hear the 2 takes from Donnie RightSide and the Whale Capper. Donnie RightSide, I'm on the under 50.5. I actually got it 51 for show purposes. I'll find out what the juice is right here. I got it at 51 at under 51 at -105. I bet it at 50.5. Donnie RightSide, Niners Rams.
But if you're laying in the bushes looking to jump this football game, it's probably the only way you should be looking is for the Rams. But you say, oh, my God, did you see what the 49ers – did you see what they did to Cleveland? And you see how the struggle of the past couple of games from the Rams. You have to take some things out. And even the common gambler, which you would get caught up in, you say, wait a second. Oh, my God, Todd Gurley's going to miss this game. Akeem Talib's not going to – oh, my Niners going to roll. But if you look at the injuries, who is injured compared to both sides – the Niners are way more injured. You're talking about no left tackle, no right tackle, no use check, and then just popping up running through my Twitter feed. Oh, we expect Kittle to play with a groin injury for the next football game versus the Rams. Are you kidding me with those guys now? Look, I love Kyle Shanahan. I preach Kyle Shanahan. The Niners are a really good football team, and they have an extremely bright future. But looking at this as a one-up, we all know how well Sean McVay prepares as well. I know it's take out the Super Bowl, which you really can't. But even if you do include the Super Bowl, what is it, 10-1 straight up and 8-2 or whatever against the spread that they've been in the last 10 to 11 ball games, they're going to be rested and ready for this game. But the big numbers and the big players are what we look at. Oh, my God, Todd Gurley. This isn't Todd Gurley 2018 Week 3 where it's 15 carries for 125 yards and another 6 catches for 90 yards. Todd Gurley is a good football player at this time. He's no longer a change of pace where if he's playing, it's going to be a dominant performance. You're barely to get anything out of this guy's bulky knees at this point. You got to save him up, and they're looking more towards the playoffs. And heck, even in the Super Bowl, a couple weeks of rest, he's still not effective even in the Super Bowl itself. So you got to take yourself away from some of the injuries coming from the Rams side when you look and how good those 49ers looked. The way this game plan should set up, McVay's going to be ready for this ball game. If we can get a healthy Brandon Cooks, you're talking about, I know the Niners have played very well in their secondary, but you're really going to get tested from this threesome and also from Everett at tight end. They have a lot of emerging things. The one thing you need is Jared Goff to play and play well. And would this game look a little bit different to us, Jimmy, if that Zerline field goal goes through and say, hey, the Rams also 4-1, they're pretty good. If you can get this number at a 3, I think it's a great look for the Rams, even though the optics of what you've seen the past couple weeks, oh my God, the Niners with points. How can you pass it up? I think the Rams might be lying in wait in this one.
Robert Weimer says, yay, finally Donnie agrees with me just in time because this is my biggest play of the day. I also made a move on the Rams under 10.5 wins thanks to you guys' breakdowns before the season started, and I have to be sitting here right now feeling great about that under 10.5 wins on the Rams. Well, Capper, I've been very curious to hear what you thought of my under 50.5. Take it away, my friend. Niners, Rams.
I'll tell you, man, that's a kind of a nice little contrarian play there. I haven't heard really anyone make a case for an under in this game, but I get it. Like, I get where you're coming from. I personally bet the Rams here, thinking this is just a horrific spot for the Niners. You have a short turnaround off of Monday Night Football where you looked all universe. You have to go play a divisional opponent on a short week. They get 10 days to prepare for you. Sean McVay, a coach who traditionally utilizes his additional time to prepare better than almost any other coach in the league. And, you have a defense with the Niners that's looked great on the basis of a pass rush, but has generally through history struggled against misdirection, against, a little bit of a confusing look from the offense, which is, McVay's specialty. As you go back through the 3 games where McVay really kind of trotted out an official, hard, playing hard for the win. He's scoring 40 points without really, trying against this Niners defense. And so, to a degree, the obvious answer is, we'll take the over. But I think you see more of an opportunity here for the Niners to play a little bit of keep away. For the Rams to play a little bit of keep away, to get an early lead, and to try to play a little ball control here and keep the Niners from having an opportunity to come back and expose their defense. The Rams, obviously their defense struggled big time against the Seahawks. There's no denying that. They struggled big time against the Bucs. And I think this sets up for an opportunity where if they can force Jimmy G to play from behind, force him to try to beat them through the air instead of the other way around, I think this sets up well for them at home. In a spot where they need it more. This is a Rams look for me, but your Rams under is interesting. I got to tell you.
I'll take interesting.
Like
because it could have been, it's funny, the word Robert Weimer uses is that it's not being harpooned by the whale capper. And that's right. It's not being, and I really feel like this is just, and Donnie talked about just a different Rams team, especially with Gurley looking like the 40-year-old Adrian Peterson out there. So a lot of people liking the Rams out here, but not Manny Sanchez locking in San Fran plus 3.5. Not my guy Jake Bell liking the 49ers money line. Nutflush Allen says Goff can't hit the side of a barnyard door, and Joe Yurkovich says I got Rams first half minus 1.5. They come out strong here. I'm so excited. Walla Walla says like that under a lot. This game and the Vikings game. I'm just so excited. I just don't want anyone to speak to me while the game is going on. And that's not my grandfather, but the man who made love to my grandmother. He would watch games. I would watch old Niners games. And is it making love when they're 75? I don't know. But we would watch games together, and no one was allowed to speak during plays. Nobody. You couldn't speak in the kitchen. You couldn't speak in a different room. And I love that shit. And I can't wait to watch these games and have nobody speak to me. Okay, let's move on to Falcons Cardinals. I'm nervous about this spot. Falcons minus 2.5. I've locked in. There were 2s on the board an hour or 2 ago, no longer. This total opened up at 49.5, now 51.5 or 52. I wish I had gotten on the over at 49.5. I did not want to take that late line. I did not want to take it at 51.5 or 52, which I could have. So we have Atlanta, and we've talked about this all year. And Whale Capper brought it up last week, I believe, talking about the teams that don't go home after a road game and how successful they've been. The teams that are traveling the right way. Atlanta 1-4, spent a week in the desert after getting beat by the Texans. And I like that. They didn't go home after the loss. They flew directly from Houston to Phoenix. They've been practicing at Arizona State campus. I expect them to be focused here. Their defense needs to play much better than it did. Julio Jones is an absolute monster. He's going to go up against his secondary, rookie Byron Murphy Jr., Deontay Thompson, Jalen Thompson, Peterson not back till next week. Arizona's defense is ugly, although Chandler Jones and Suggs still giving them something. They're tied for the NFL lead with 11 forced fumbles. I just see that, yes, Atlanta is so bad, but they have to be better than this Arizona Cardinals. It's that simple. And I had to make sure that I was not. Don't let fear dictate what I expect to be a winning bet. And that's the Atlanta Falcons minus 2.5 and minus 105. And Donnie and I talked about it on Tuesday, and afterwards I pulled the trigger. Donnie instilled enough confidence in me to pull the trigger. Falcons minus 2.5. Donnie, right side, that's what I'm on. What do you think about this spot?
I think you're right, Jimmy. And look, square plays win, and road teams have been done very well in the NFL this season. This is going to be one we're going to look at, and they say, well, how the hell can you back the Atlanta Falcons after what we've seen? Well, to be honest with you, there's NFL teams, and then there's the extreme bottom rung of what we think. And maybe you think Atlanta is in that bottom rung, but when you look at the first 5 games of the season, we're going to take a look at talent and what you're going to actually play. The Atlanta Falcons played the Minnesota Vikings, the Philadelphia Eagles, the Indianapolis Colts, the Tennessee Titans, and the Houston Texans. Now they're going to go up and play the Arizona Cardinals. That might be without their all-world tailback. Still might be without Christian Kirk, who's going to be a game-time decision at wide receiver. Yes, Arizona won last week. Congratulations. Great win. Young quarterback played well at the end, scrambled around. The one thing I actually like about this ball game is you do have some speed on defense for Atlanta, which is exactly the way you want to try to combat, Kyler Murray in the backfield. But this just comes down to saying there's NFL talent. That the Atlanta Falcons are so much more talented than the Arizona Cardinals. And again, talent doesn't always win alone. You need coaching staff, you need players that are buying in. But it's one of these games where you're farther down the line. When I talked about why I like the Broncos last week, Jimmy was like, you know what, this is one of those last stand games. We're still playing well. We've been in every game. Let's go out and win this game and see what happens before we might have to tear it all down. This is a game where the plane goes out to Arizona, stays there, and Dan Quinn probably doesn't come back on the plane if they lose this game. It's one of those type situations. If Julio Jones is healthy, which looks like he is, that offense should be able to put up points. And if if the Atlanta Falcons can't beat the Arizona Cardinals, he's not coming home on the plane. Dan Quinn's going to be removed from head coach.
Yeah. It all points to a man knowing his job is on the line and doing whatever it is necessary to go back to Atlanta with a win, is the way I see it. Whale Capper, can Arizona ruin Dan Quinn's job?
God, such a good spot for Atlanta. This is so good. I didn't bet this game because I was just like, I'm not getting involved with Atlanta anytime this season. Like, forget about it. Even if they're the right side, I'm not getting involved. But I got to tell you, and I'm sure there's some weeks on here where I talk you guys into plays, but I feel like you guys have just talked me into this one. I'm going to lay the points with Atlanta now. This is anytime you can back a guy who's trying to avoid getting fired on the tarmac, you got to do it. This is the fact that they stayed out there for a week and got focused prep, and that they should look good in all 3 phases against a team that just, high-fiving each other. They just got their first win of the season. Like, this is a beautiful spot. Falcons get a road win. I love this, guys. Let's go. Let's go, Falcons. I didn't expect to say this today.
That's standing O right there, baby.
I love it. I absolutely love it. That's wonderful, wonderful news. Brant Hunt, and we got to speed this up a tiny bit. We got 4 games left, not a ton of time, but Brant Hunt says, how does this game stay under? I guess if I could have got a 49.5, I probably would have taken it. Whale Capper, what do you think of the total here?
Yeah, I would have said over for sure. Although, the Falcons defense would have been a huge part of that. And now that we've kind of talked this out a little bit, maybe their defense shows up a little bit. They have personnel, they have coaching, they should play better. They didn't look good against, an absolutely top 5 quarterback in the NFL in Watson last week. But Kyler Murray's not as good right now. And for sure, he's uneven. He can make mistakes. This might set up for if you're going to play an over, just stick to the Atlanta team total over.
Yeah. I'm not going to double up. I'm not going to double up here. I can't.
Double up on the Falcons, baby.
I can't do that. But
no one wants the Falcons right now. No better time to get involved.
All right, I love it. Brant Hunt said it's going to go over 55. Donnie RightSide, just very quickly, what do you think about this total, where it stands right now at, I believe it's 51.5?
It's got to and again, if you want the over, you probably want Johnson in the game. You probably want Christian Kirk, but that could affect your Atlanta wager. Look, if we're looking at a game, just keep it simple. This game screams over. It doesn't scream under for me at any time.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. It certainly does. And I'm just gonna. Let's keep rolling along here. Cowboys Jets. So. I had Flash on my show live yesterday, and he was just saying, he's doubling up. He's taking Cowboys halftime, full-time, and he got Cowboys at -8.5 and was very confident. Now that it moves down to 7, we know Darnold's playing. No fear whatsoever for the man. And Teddy Covers on my show earlier today saying he's on the Jets and has sprinkled some on the money line. We know the Cowboys dealing with injuries to their offensive line. This Jets team, all of the talk, even Le'Veon Bell, they're all just so excited to have Sammy back in the huddle. And you can understand why. I mean, 2 games, New York goes combined 233 yards with Luke Falk. Bell, 206 yards so far on the season. That under yards for Le'Veon Bell. Whale Capper, very thankful for that hookup in Miami. I just sitting back, calling people asshole for no reason, slapping people's asses. Feel very confident about this spot. Jets off to their worst start in 16 years. 2003 team, Herm Edwards, 2003 team, also 0-4. Cowboys have allowed 2 straight opponents to rush for at least 100 yards. It's been 2 years since they've allowed 3 teams to do that. Prescott coming off a game against Green Bay, which he passed for 463 yards. I mean, it was when they were way, way behind. Zeke has the fewest carries and yards rushing through 5 games in his 4-year career. I love that people like the Jets here because I've got Eagles futures. Donnie, RightSide, Cowboys, Jets.
Yeah, this is an interesting spot because now when we're talking about look-ahead games, this is a look-ahead game with a win for the Dallas Cowboys, how I peg it. But also, you have to be smart if you're in the front office or for the coaching staff when we take a look at the Dallas Cowboys this week. Is this one where we're saying, hey, Tyron Smith, sure, get out there. It's an ankle sprain, a high ankle sprain. You might re-aggravate and be out another 4 weeks if that happens with a huge game on deck next week. Hey, La'el Collins, you have an MCL sprain? Go out there on turf up in North Jersey and see if we could gut this one out. Oh, yeah, you might be out as well when we play the Philadelphia Eagles. This game, and I agree with the line movement. What do we open up, Jimmy? 7.5, even 9.5 at some offshore spots. That's down to 7 and sinking quick, and I absolutely agree. Early in the week, I'm talking about, oh, my God, Dallas is going to kill this team. But when you look exactly what's going to take place, the Jets have a good defensive line. If we're going to have at least one of the 2 tackles probably missed a game. If I was Dallas, I would have them both miss because I still think the Dallas Cowboys are the better team and can win this football game. But make no mistake about it, they're needing to get right before they play the Philadelphia Eagles. They need to pick up a victory, they need to get on some confidence back in Dak Prescott and move on to the Eagles. But this spot screams as we're going on the road. We might even get a scare in the second half from the New York Jets now that Darnold's back. I do think the Dallas Cowboys win, but let me tell you something. I don't want anywhere near taking the Cowboys at a -7 in this situation.
I agree. Whale Capper, Cowboys, Jets.
Yeah, we're seeing this the same way. This is a great spot to back the Jets if Darnold wasn't coming off of an extended absence from mononucleosis. I've heard mixed reports. Darnold's lost 15, 20 pounds, hasn't been in the weight room. He may not have a ton of confidence in the strength of his throwing arm. He may be a little hesitant, a little tentative, try to avoid getting hit. All of those things kind of scare me off the Jets, but I agree the Jets are the right side here. And, just the fact that they may roll a conservative approach out there, try to keep the game short, try to rely more on the running attack, may lean for an under. But I'm not going to get involved in this one until we see what Darnold looks like out there in actual game, game setting.
That makes sense. And that's probably where I'm going to end up as well. Let's move on to another polarizing game. Broncos opened up at -2.5. They're at 2s and even a 1.5 on the board. This total opened at 40, now 40.5s and 41s. And I find it pretty difficult to believe that the Broncos are a good team all of a sudden. That Chargers performance was unbelievably bad. One of the ugliest performances I've seen in a long time. And if you go over what the numbers that were put up, and we will in the Charger spot next game go over the numbers that Rivers dropped. They were just horrifying. Von Miller off to his slowest start, 9-year career, 2 sacks. They're moving him all over the place. It's going to be tough without Chubb out there. Mariota being sacked 22 times, second most in the NFL. The Titans get Lewin back. They get Lewin back. He's going to fortify their line. It's sidelined him. Oh, and Kevin Pamphile as well, returning from his knee injury that sidelined him for the first 5 games. They're going to be more. It won't continue, I don't expect, with Lewin and Pamphile. Titans are just a 6th team since the 1970 merger to go through the first 5 games with 1 turnover. Mariota, the only quarterback to start 5 games this season without a turnover, longest active streak without an interception. And the Broncos' secondary's been annihilated. That's why the Rivers performance was so perplexing. But it wasn't perplexing to Donnie RightSide. Donnie RightSide was on the Broncos last week. Is he on the Broncos again this week? Donnie RightSide, Titans, Broncos.
This is a tough spot, yeah, because Denver's like my adopted team. I feel like their father at this point, trying to get him in the right direction, get him back on the field at this point. But when we look at the game overall, Jimmy, I thought Tennessee should have had even though it's funny, I try to contradict myself and I give out, Buffalo Bills plus 3.5 last week. That was a really tough spot for the Bills to go into. I just thought it would be a lower scoring game, maybe one of those 17-14 type situations where the Bills can escape. I was really disappointed, even though the Bills have a great defense. Didn't get a lot of love out of the Tennessee side last week. And if we take a look back at the past couple weeks, let's take a look the way the Titans are winning, or losing, I should say, and winning. 19-17, 20-7, 24-14, 14-7. This game screams under. And I know if I was taking a look at it, correct me if I'm wrong, Jimmy, where we opened up at the week, it hasn't really moved much. 40, 40.5, 41. More as a side in this football game. I'm taking a look at Joe Flacco, and I see the way the Denver offense wants to operate. Heavy ground game, play action passes, keep it short. Yes, Cortland Sutton busted a nice long run last week after a 15 or 16-yard catch for a 70-yard touchdown. That's not the norm. These two teams are going to play to a slow tempo, grinded out football game on the ground. I'm not going to be surprised if this one is like a final score that we saw last week with the Charger game, 20-13. I like the under in this one more than the side.
The under makes a lot of sense. It sure does. Well, Capper, Titans, Broncos.
So I'm looking for Titans money line on this one. I think they're very live as dogs. And, 2 weeks ago we talked about setting up the Titans Falcons, that was a beautiful spot for the Titans, but I just couldn't trust Mariota and I just couldn't trust Arthur Smith's offense. This is, again, another beautiful spot for this Titans team. I know they're on the road. I know it's at altitude, but you have a situation that's played out with the Broncos where they played their hearts out 4 weeks straight to try to get this win for Fangio, first win. They finally get it last week. And oh, by the way, you look at the scoreboard last week, you're like, oh, they're up 17-0. This is an easy win. There were some times in that fourth quarter where it looked like Philip Rivers had a chance to come back on that team. They kind of held on for dear life. Obviously, a 10-point win or 7 point, whatever the final score was, is not necessarily indicative of the fact that the Chargers had a chance at the end there. But surely, the Broncos are running on fumes. They've put a lot into these last 4 weeks and only have the one win to show for it. I think to a degree, they are looking at themselves as favorites in this game. They're underselling the dangers and the threats that a mobile quarterback in Mariota has coming into town. And to a degree, the strength of the offensive line for the Titans should neutralize any of the pass rush issues that Denver tries to bring after them. And then, they can potentially score early, play a little bit of keep away with the heavy dose of Derrick Henry. This is a nice spot for the Titans. I think their defense matches up well. There's not a lot of misdirection or layers of nuance and challenge when it comes to going up against this Broncos offense. And the Tennessee Titans have a complete defense. They're relatively healthy. I think they get this win.
And I know a few people on that look as well. And a lot of it makes sense. And they seem to continue to win as dogs. We got to speed this up a little bit. Steelers, Chargers. I'm on the under in this spot. 41.5. It's been there all week. Chargers open up at -6. They're now at 6.5 right now. And we talked on Tuesday whether they should be 7-point favorites over anyone. We have Devlin Hodges, the all-time leader in FCS history passing yards, 14,584. He looked pretty good last week, 7 of 9, 68 yards. And he's going to have to do something because Pittsburgh ranks 29th in yards rushing, and we know that's what you're going to do against them. You're going to say, all right, Devlin Hodges, you beat us. Steelers have gone over 100 yards on the ground just once in their past 12 games. So I don't see that changing here. I don't see that changing here at all. God, the Chargers look so awful. Unbelievably bad. Melvin Ingram's hurt. Derwin James is hurt. I took the under here and can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about it. Donnie, RightSide, Steelers, Chargers.
Now, we're taking a look at another situation which seems to be prevalent throughout the NFL this year, like rookies, and I'm talking not even backups, like third stringers getting starts in the NFL. But here's the thing that we like. Hodges isn't traveling from being a Charger and going to play in Pittsburgh where that crowd's going to be loud. He's not going into New England. He's not going into Philadelphia. He's not going into Dallas. He's not going into Seattle. He's going into an environment where his fans are going to be more prevalent than the home team's fans. That is a major advantage for a young quarterback, that just getting the play calls right, just getting the timing right, where he doesn't have to cover his ears. How many times you see that in a game where it's a hostile environment, even from, Aaron Rodgers trying to hear the play call. The Steeler fans are going to get outnumbered, the Charger fans, probably 5-1 in their own building. That is massive. Watching the game last week with the Chargers, what gets better for him? I got to ask you, Jimmy. You're down Pouncey now. You're injured at wide receiver. Yeah, you have Keenan Allen. Phillip Rivers looks like he's on one leg out there, and all you're doing is throwing constant dump passes in the flat to Austin Eckler to try to say that is your new offense at this time. I see a lower scoring ball game, and I got to tell you, I'm not a big proponent. Sometimes you have to change your stripes. I usually look to make bank off rookie quarterbacks, especially third-string quarterbacks. How much of a downgrade is Hodges going to be from actually what Rudolph got from the weeks before, or even a bad elbow Ben Roethlisberger? It's going to be negligible. If you can get that 6.5 or 7, I think Pittsburgh's going to be in this ball game. I think the fans are going to be engaged out there as Steeler fans, even though they're not having a good season. They already bought their tickets pre. They'll be in the stadium. I think the Steelers might have a legitimate shot to win this football game, even outright in this spot, Jimmy.
Wow. I've certainly looking towards the Steelers after this breakdown. It just really resonates with me. Steve on the under as well. Brendan W liking the over here. Eddie Oiler leaning towards the Steelers. Whale Capper, Steelers, Chargers.
I like that breakdown that Donnie gave us there, and I like his confidence in Duck Hodges. And I'm lining up the harpoon here, and we're coming for that under because this is an over spot, Jimmy. This is an over spot, and it's not even close. This is a no sweater. Duck Hodges. Go back and look at some of his tape from his FCS days. He slipped through the cracks. The fact that he ended up on the Steelers roster and wasn't even drafted was pretty wild, and kind of a failure of NFL teams to do their homework. I've seen enough YouTube highlights of this guy. You see him in some big spots. Nighttime game, Tallahassee last year against Florida State, and he was balling. He can throw the ball deep. He can push the ball. He brings more dynamic, passing attack to this Steelers offense than Mason Rudolph does, in my opinion. I thought if Mason Rudolph was trotted out there, especially if he was coming off this concussion, then yeah, under, no doubt. And, Chargers probably get right here. But I think that the Steelers are live, and I think that they're going to score some points here. And the fact that, you will have the crowd, you'll have the atmosphere on the side of the Steelers, I think gets them out there early, gets them a little momentum, gets them some scores here. And then the fact that it is a Pacific Coast team in the nighttime spot. The door will be open for the Chargers to come back in here. And honestly, even with limitations with the offensive line, even though you have some injuries that the Chargers will be dealing with, the Steelers' defense is not great. They can be passed on. And honestly, where they are vulnerable is like the 11 to 20 yard range, which is Phillip Rivers' absolute bread and butter. And, so even if the Chargers are losing at some point in this game, I expect Phillip Rivers to throw them back into it. I think both teams get into the 20s here, and I think over 41.5 is one of the first Sunday Night Football over of the season.
Wow.
I think it will be.
Very, very, very concerning hearing that breakdown. And Bogey 34 says, Wales hands are flying. I'm buying. All right, let's move on to Lions, Packers. This is a Monday nighter. We got to be pretty quick here because we got to put a bow on this show. Detroit, Green Bay. Green Bay opening at -6. There's 3.5s on the board now. Patricia off the bye. We talked about this pretty well on Tuesday. No Devontae Adams for Rodgers. Got to keep this one a little tighter than the others. Detroit, Green Bay. Donnie, right side.
Yep, the extra rested and ready and prepared. And we're also talking about real quick, Jimmy, we talked about on the show earlier, look at that schedule and look at the big-time games that the Packers had to get up for. Now maybe even though it's a division rival, a little sleepier spot, if I can get 4 points in this game, I'm taking Detroit here.
Yeah, and we think there could even be buyback on the Packers late is what we talked about. So who knows, maybe a 4.5 come Monday. Whale Capper, Lions, Packers.
Yeah, I don't have action pregame on this one, but I'm hopeful that the Lions are frisky early. I'm hoping that coming off the bye, they are prepared and that they do catch a little bit of a lead here, because I'd like to get the Packers at, just to get a win here at plus money, or to get a win by 3 or something like that, because I think the Packers still do outclass this team top to bottom. I know that we're putting a lot of stake in, if you have a good coaching staff and you have a whole bunch of rest, you tend to come out and you kick butt. But I'm not sure that Matt Patricia is a guy that you can count on to really have all the answers. And, the Packers on a little bit of a roll right here. One more divisional win. This would make, 3 home wins, obviously, against the Vikings, Bears, and Lions. But that puts them in control of the NFC North. So this is a big game for them.
It is a big game, and we're going to get to know little more about whether Patricia's going to be a head coach in this league. All right, there is all of the games broken down by Donnie RightSide, Whale Capper, and myself. Let's start with Donnie RightSide's looks on this card raffle. Could you pop them up? Here is what Donnie RightSide is on come Sunday. Eagles +3, Saints +1.5, Falcons -2.5, Washington, Miami over 42, Bengals +11, Bucks +2. Let's move over to the Whale Capper and get a look at the Whale Capper's looks come Sunday. There it is right there. Cincinnati, Baltimore, under 47. Seattle, Cleveland, over 47.5. New Orleans, Jacksonville, under 44. Eagles +3. Titans, money line. And then the over 42. And then let's go to my action right now. There it is. 4 totals to get it rolling. And then Falcons and Texans. And do not like hearing Whale Capper on the other side of that Chargers game. What a treat it is to roll with you guys. We have no show without these great cappers in the chat. Deer Slayer, Ski, Robert Weimer, Brant Hunt, Riku Rogue Sauce, Batfist in the house, Miguel Angel, Ziggy Balls, Craig 77, Antonio Rosales, Jake Bell, all you guys, Bogey 34. What a treat it is to roll with you guys. Manny Sanchez, Paper Perfect, Eddie Oiler, Steve, Brandon W. What a truly a joy it is to work with you guys when you bring in all this humor, all these great insights. Donnie RightSide, any last words for these great cappers in the chat and watching at home?
Yep, we all look, chat box, cappers, we all put in all the work. It's like being back in high school. You study all week for the test, and then you're ready for that final exam. The final exam is going right. I'm looking at nice, 18 or 20-0 from the show this weekend. Thanks for tuning in. Going back and forth with the chat box, as Whale Capper said on his tweet, you get a lot of laughs and a lot of capping. What better time on the Audible here at sportsbookreview.com? I love this show, man.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Whale Capper, any last words for these great cappers?
Best of luck this weekend, everybody. Even though you were going head-to-head in that game, only one of us is wearing a Warren Moon jersey, and that's you, Jimmy. So, last word. Happy birthday to SBR's Natalie this weekend. If you see her in the chats, wish her well.
22 years old. Damn right.
Unbelievable. Finally allowed to have some drinks, although I don't know what the drinking age is in Costa Rica. It's probably like 18 or 15 or something. But anyway, have a great weekend, everybody, and let's win some football bets.
It's actually 9 years old down here in Costa Rica, so she's been hammering it for a while. Thank you guys so much, everybody in the chat. Thank you, everybody watching home. Thank you on behalf of Donnie RightSide, Whale Capper, myself, and everybody at SBR. Thank you for watching. Let's have a big week, and hopefully I'm wearing this Moon jersey next week with another winning week under my belt. I need them desperately. Talk to you guys soon.